Hi, my name is Helene Russell, and this is a short video. Well, this may be the first part of a video on Marjorie Suchocki. This is a video lecture on Marjorie Suchocki's book, Divinity and Diversity, a book that we're reading for our class. And I encourage you to take a look at this book, this video that I'm creating as you're reading the book, so you get a better sense of what points that she's making. Before you do that, I encourage you to review what we talked about last time in class and the video that I made on Intro to Process Theology. And I invited you to both look at Marjorie Suchocki's introduction, her overview of process thought and how important relationality is. But then I also made a little Zoom lecture from the reading from the Creating Women's Theology book that Monica Coleman, myself, and Nancy Howell wrote. And I encourage you to review that and review the notes that you took on that, to help you get a sense of what some of the foundational claims of process theology are in the worldview in which process theology begins. Marjorie Suchocki is also a process theologian, and she has some elements in the work that we're reading here that have process theology, that express a process or relational theology. So let's begin. Where's the, hang on. Okay, so that's actually in the background is a picture of California. And now I've got it set up for us. So this is the PowerPoint that I made that is also on the Populi for your perusal. This is on Divinity and Diversity by Marjorie Suchocki. So this is a picture I took of Marjorie Suchocki when she's being silly wearing her hat. And this is a necklace that she made when I saw her recently. She was my professor of theology when I was in graduate school and was the director of my dissertation. And she was the dean as well as professor at the Claremont Graduate University and the Claremont School of Theology, among other schools. But that's where she retired from there and is emeritus there. She's United Methodist and continues to be very much involved in the United Methodist Church. She now lives in Dallas near her two daughters, although she did live in near Claremont for a long time. She's the author of at least 8 books, there may be 9 in there, on various topics such as systematic theology, a book on sin that those of you who are taking systematic theology will read and study next time you're taking theology, book on prayer, book on preaching, Christian theology in relation to other religious claims. That's the one that we're going to be reading, among other books. Now, she's a process theologian and a process and relational theologian. So process theology, as we've talked, as I encourage you to take a look at, remind yourself of what some of the norms of process theology are, or the themes of process theology are: relationality, freedom, novelty. So keep all of those in mind as you're reading this book. Process theology is based on some of the insights of Alfred North Whitehead, who wrote about process and reality. That's the name of his book, one of his books, in which the universe is understood, and the universe broadly is reality, is both in process and it has a consistency. And the consistency lies in the values and the ways that the processes happen. There is a process of creation, redemption, rebirth, and sanctification. And these processes may be named different things, but this is the way that us Christians name them. In process theology, Christian process theology,
God is understood as processive, changing, growing, moving. God is also incarnate, present with us in every moment, each of us, each bit of reality, each animate part of reality. God is present with us. And God is also relational. Thus, God is not static or separate. God is more than us, but we are also interconnected to God. God is internally connected with us. We are relational beings, all of us, with each other and with the world around us. That includes creation, includes the birds that are flying outside the window right now, that are getting the last bits of dinner before they snuggle down for dinner for a night that's going to be kind of chilly. They're very pretty. Anyway, we are relational beings, and we are connected to all other entities internally, not just externally, not just me saying, I can say that I am, 3 feet from the sparrow that's eating out of the feeder, but rather we are internally related to each other. We constitute each other. And we've talked a little bit about that, and we can talk a little bit about that again in class if there are questions about that. We are constituted by those relations with each other. And thus we are deeply impacted by the way that others are in the world, both those right next to us and those far away from us. We are, in one sense, unified. We humans are, in one sense, a unity within ourselves, but in another sense, we are very complex. We are complex because we are constituted by others, and those others are different from us, and some of them are really different from us, and yet we take them into ourselves and they become part of us. Now, this book that we're reading, Divinity and Diversity, is particularly on religious pluralism. And her argument here in this book is about how can we create a theology, how can we create a Christian theology, how can we understand Christian theology in a way that it can be open to religious pluralism. Now, in the past, there have been many different approaches. Well, and currently, I shouldn't say not just in the past, but currently there are various approaches to religious pluralism. A common, more conservative approach to religious pluralism from a variety of different religions is a kind of exclusivism, that whatever religion is yours is the only one that's correct. For Christianity, this has meant that there is no salvation outside of the church. Originally, this doctrine, no salvation outside of the church, was created to address Christian heretics in the 3rd century, the 4th century, 5th century, and so on, when the norms of Christian theology are actually not yet set in stone, and thus the people in charge, the men in charge, are trying to discern what are the orthodox ways of understanding what Christian beliefs are, who God is, who we are, who Jesus is, what's the relationship between God, Jesus, us, and what we are to do. And often there were folks who disagreed with each other, and the people in power often were the ones that got to decide which beliefs became normative. Now, there were also other issues that were involved in that figuring out which beliefs became normative. Some of that had to do with tradition. Some of that has to do with consistency of theology. But it became very important that Christianity have an orthodoxy and claims about what doctrines were correct and what doctrines were not. And this often got expanded to include other religions. in claiming that other religions are also wrong, and the people who believe them are also wrong. And they're not just wrong intellectually, but their beliefs will lead them to not being saved, either in the way we live, but also in the end times, either in heaven or in an eschatological moments. That's one approach. Christianity's got it right, other people are wrong, and a particular kind of Christianity is usually named that excludes other Christian claims as well. Now, another approach to religious pluralism is that of inclusivism, and this claim, and this becomes very popular in the 50s and 60s, particularly popularized by Karl Rahner, who talks about what he calls baptism by desire. And he believes that people of other religions and people who aren't religious at all are actually able to be saved because they are they are living in righteous ways. He calls these persons anonymous Christians. And these folks live righteously. They make good decisions. They make ethical decisions. They're kind to other people. And some folks might not have ever heard of Christianity or Jesus. Other folks might have rejected Christianity or Judaism or Christianity or Jesus because of other reasons. And thus Rahner and many others don't feel it's right for those folks to be condemned, but rather make an argument of inclusivism, that all people will be saved, or many people will be saved because they behave in the right ways, or they behave in ways that are ethical and kind and similar to what Jesus would have wanted us to do, or similar to Christian values, even if they're not making explicitly Christian claims. Now, a third approach is called pluralism, and pluralism affirms that there are other religions and that they are valid. Not all beliefs are valid, but that there are other religious values and other religious claims to understanding salvation or liberation or healing that are valid and just as valid as Christian claims are. And those other religions and value systems are based on are saved or are valued, I should say, on their own terms. They're not evaluated in terms of how well they fit with Christianity, but they're valued based on some external claims that Christianity is also evaluated on. This way of approaching different religions is one in which differences can be respected, and we can see. For Christians, we might name the issue as sin. Other people might name it as human problems. One of the people that talk about this is John Hick, and he talks about religion then in this context is just called the real. That which is most real is understood as what we would call God. Other people might call something else. And so there, instead of using the word God or even that which is divine, he calls it the real, in a way to help us be as inclusive as possible in our discussion about pluralism. Now, one of the issues of pluralism is that often, well, first, it can fall into relativism. Now, do you understand what I mean by relativism? Think about relativism in terms of, well, all religious claims or claims about that which is most important or divine or the real are equalized or left on an equal ground. It gives you no criteria by which to judge whether different claims are better than others, nor criteria to judge by what different behaviors are better than others. And this can lead us to issues of, problematic ethics. It also leads us to a kind of anything goes, which is not very helpful. There's no way to adjudicate truth, no way to say this is more true or more helpful, this is more valuable, this religious claim or this religious perspective is more helpful in these contexts when these are in those contexts. Unless we talk about some kind of external way in which we can figure out how to adjudicate. Now, often what happens with conversations about religious pluralism is that people end up focusing on something that's not explicitly religious. So people would focus on justice, for example, and that those issues focusing on justice issues can avoid truth claims about God, right? They can avoid truth claims about what it means to live in a religious life or spirituality. Then the focus becomes so external and really secular that we're not really talking about religion anymore. We're almost saying, let's just all put aside all our religious beliefs and our religious practices and those things that we hold most dear to talk about this thing in which this lowest common denominator in which we might all agree on. Now, that's one approach, and that can be helpful in a variety of contexts. And yet, it's not all that satisfying. Suchocki is arguing for something that gets at something more valuable here, or more that enables us to have content and appreciate the differences and qualities of different religious beliefs and different religious practices, so that we can be enhanced by those differences. And here is a wonderful group of folks that are engaging in these kinds of conversations, both with an emphasis upon questions of justice and how to make the world a better place, how to take care of the environment, for example, how to make sure that people are not harmed because of their religious beliefs. And I just wanted to give us an example of some of those folks from different religions. Now, John Cobb's approach to the question of religious diversity is slightly different. His argument, and this is Suchocki's argument also, although she tweaks it a little here and there, is that differences are important, and that we should not merely try to avoid those differences to get to the lowest common denominator of what we have in common, but rather see the ways in which differences can enhance us rather than divide us. See that your perspective offers a perspective that's different than mine. It offers a perspective that can actually enhance my way of understanding what's going on in a particular situation. It can enhance my understanding of what it means to be human and what it means to be a religious human, or a human that is engaged in some kind of religious practice, where spirituality is an important element in your life. And perhaps what you do to enhance your spirituality is different than what I do to enhance my spirituality. And I can be enhanced by learning more about your view and your practices. Cobb then extends pluralism to the very structure of the universe itself. So Cobb's argument here is that the universe is big. The universe is diverse. The universe is contextual in that things happen differently in different contexts. God engages with us in the midst of our context. This is a process theology view that we talked about before. And since God engages with each of us internally and within our cultural, social, intimate networks of friends and the environment, naturally our experience and engagement with God is going to be slightly different. In some ways, maybe there might be big differences if God is engaging with a person in a very different context. I liked this image here in which we see a divinity. This is actually trying to be the earth, right? But if we can imagine God engages with persons in this context, in a Christian context, this isn't necessarily geographical, but that's one petal of the flower of religion, whereas God engages with persons in a different context, with different values, with different practices, with different ways of understanding who God is and what one ought to do in relation to God and in relation to other people. And I think it's an interesting perspective for us to reflect upon. You know, naturally, there's going to be elements of us that are what we have in common as humans. We all need to eat. We all need to sleep. We all want companionship. We all need to have safety and cover. But different people have different values in themselves, and particularly those values are often expressed culturally and understood culturally in different nations and in different cultures and in different parts of the world with different climates and different histories. Now for Cobb, he wants to talk about this pluralism, which he sees at the very structure of the universe in the notion that God is related to creativity and that creativity is pluralistic, is that he understands Christ as a Christian. He's a United Methodist, so he's going to focus on Christ, but he sees Christ as that which reveals the power of creative transformation to us. The power of creative transformation. So the divine is understood as creative transformation, taking that which is and transforming it, enabling us for the next moment to create something new, something that sees things in a different way, that looks at things in a new way, that sees solutions to problems that nobody else has seen or people haven't tried yet, that helps us individually grow, to be transformed. And Suchocki takes this and she argues for a transformational pluralism in which the differences between religions and cultures are not debilitating. They don't create problems in which we can't get past, nor are they something that gets glassed over, and we're not going to talk about those distinctivenesses between different religions to just focus on the thing that we have in common. But rather they supplement each other and enhance each other. We grow and learn more about what it means to be human, and perhaps we can see what our own religious claims are. They might be even broader or broadened from interacting with persons of other religion, with other religious beliefs and symbol systems and stories. God then is seen as a flower, like a flower with many petals, each contributing something unique and adding to the beauty and complexity and the creative transformation of the whole. Now, she takes this notion of thinking about religious pluralism, and she moves it, or she engages it then in thinking about different doctrines of Christian theology. She's going to begin with creation. Now, we've talked about creation a little bit, but we're going to talk some more about how she understands creation and how she understands the dynamic of God's creation. How does God create? And then she's going to move into talking about radical incarnation. What does it mean to say that God is incarnate? For her, she argues that God is incarnate in each of us, not limited to God's incarnation in Christ, but that God's incarnation in Christ perhaps is a unique way in which God is incarnate, but it is also indicative and indicating to us as humans that God is incarnate in each of us and in our world. And then she's going to move into how she understands what she calls the image of God. And the image of God is something that Christian theology has understood as that which is a part of us that enables us to be transformative, to be transcendent, to be made like God. We're made in some way like God. This is something that Christian theology has argued is unique to humans. And we'll talk a little bit about the way in which Christian theology has understood that concept and how sin affects it, original sin affects it in Christian theological frameworks, historically and in contemporary ways. But we'll come to she will come to the conclusion that actually the image of God in which we were all created, which is in Genesis, let us create humanity in the image of God, means that we can't really understand God. I mean, the image of God in which I'm created, I understand some element of God. I have a connection with God, an intimate connection with God. Yet you also have an intimate connection with God. And so do people in different parts of the world. People who are different from us have intimate connections with God. And we can't understand God fully, or as fully as possible, until we are able to engage with other persons' understandings of who God is. And so the image of God is something that is supplemented and additive, rather than something that we all have in common, right? Rather than saying it's something that is limited to, which many of the Christian tradition said, image of God means we're able to be creatively self-conscious and look at what we've been and then make a decision to be something else. She's suggesting that the image of God is actually additive and summative, that it includes everybody's engagement with God. And the more that we understand that, the more we understand others' views, the greater our understanding of and our ability to relate with God will be. Now, sorry, let me go back to that because I haven't talked about that yet. And then will go on to talk about salvation. And I think we'll talk about that next time, and the way in which she understands salvation, and the way in which we can talk about salvation, and also then the reign of God. She calls it saving grace, salvation, and then the reign of God. What does that mean to be in the realm in which God lives? Let me rephrase that. The realm in which God is in charge, or the realm in which the norms or beliefs or values that God hopes us to aspire to are made more real. And then we're going to talk a bit about what does it mean to be in mission. What does mission then mean? Which in itself is something we'll talk about, not this coming week, but the following week. So let us begin. Let's stop for just a second, actually.